Okay, emotional continuity. To answer the question of what is emotional continuity is of the utmost importance for actors because it baselines the entire ability to have consistency in the acting work. Without emotional continuity, there's very, 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 very little consistency. So when we're going through this, let's go through this and really understand what makes something, first of all, emotional continuity, what makes the emotional continuity, and second of all, how as actors we can achieve emotional continuity ourselves from techniques that we can use to make sure that there's a for sure continuity in our work, and we can rest assured that we're doing the techniques correctly so that there is that continuity and it does exist. What emotional continuity is the continuity of the film medium, video quality, and the emotionality of the actor needs to be able to be matched. And you could even look at this and you could understand that the emotionality could be matched for the type of mood for scenes, for set decorations. There could be objects of meaning that go throughout the picture that help the build emotional continuity. But for when it comes down to acting, it comes down to the essence of an actor being able to have an editor get the footage and the footage being able to match from one take to another take. So let's say you walk into a restaurant and you're in a certain mood, and you can tell that you're in a certain mood. And by the time you have walked into the restaurant, the inside shot of you entering the restaurant is actually matching the exterior shot of the restaurant of you walking by. This is what's called emotional continuity. Emotional continuity is one of the most prized things because if you can achieve consistency in your work as an actor, to be able to have people tell you that you have emotional continuity in your work, it's one of the highest compliments that you can get in acting. And it takes quite a lot of work. So the work to do to be able to gain emotional continuity, and which also answers what is emotional continuity, is to use emotional preparation or use emotional tools. So when you're working in your emotional life, you have your internal emotional life. So you've got something that's internal, and that's your emotional preparation. And you have your internal self-stimulation during your emotional preparation. In that element is the time that you take to yourself to get things right emotionally. You can fester the emotion. You can do all sorts of things that need to result in honest and truthful emotion. So you go through the entire resolve of exploration, which could include a lot of different techniques and different ways to self-stimulate your emotion. And then you get to the self-stimulated emotion and you use that for the scene. You go in, you walk outside of a restaurant with that emotion. Well, on the next take, you're inside the restaurant the next take. So the editor is going to edit the outside take with the inside take. And so the next take inside the restaurant, you want to do your emotional preparation. And you want to make sure your entrance into the restaurant has that certain emotional quality, so you've got something emotionally awakened inside of yourself. And this is the process of emotional preparation. So some people have a different style of what it's called. They might call it emotional activation, but it has to do with an emotion, not a fleeting feeling, not something that's superficial. You don't want to think that because you've thought an idea, that the camera thought the idea. The camera catches a lot, especially depending on how good the camera cinematographer is. But you can't depend that the camera is going to be clear enough to be able to catch your thoughts. And you can't be solid enough to think that every single feeling the camera person's going to be able to capture, because it takes a tremendous amount of talent behind the camera to be able to achieve that. But what you can depend upon is you can depend upon your own emotional preparation or your emotional activation to be able to have something that's alive and very consistent in you that then plethoras your work. So here's the thing. You have a situation where you're walking into a restaurant with deep concern. And to make this scene work, these two scenes have to match. You've got your outside scene that gets somebody's attention, and you've got your inside scene where there's a lot of happening that goes on. And a lot of people say, well, go ahead, just give my acting double the walk outside. I'll just do the emotional little bit inside and that's that. And it's a way that people work, and it is definitely something that people do. But they're missing out on an acting opportunity, although it may not matter to them, to be quite honest. But the reality is the actor can really achieve more if they're able to do emotionally preparation on both. So you do your emotional preparation or your emotional activation outside the restaurant for the scene walking outside the restaurant and where you're about to walk in. And then you do your emotional preparation and your emotional activation inside so that you have matching emotional continuity. And you want to be able to match it. Now, how do you know you have emotional continuity? You will hear comments coming from you. People will say, oh yeah, the editing is just so easy. The hardest thing that we need to do is just to decide which take, and then every single time we just put the two takes together and it's seamless. So that's a compliment that people would say if you're using emotional continuity. Another compliment people might say is, they might just say the word seamless. The take between the one and the other is just seamless. You couldn't even tell that there was time that had passed because, real time actually passed between the filming of the one versus the other. It might even be a day or two, or it might even be a different week or a month. Likely it's within a month period. But you want to be able to achieve this, and you want to be able to understand that this is very, very, very important. So take in and understand that the ability to achieve emotional continuity is a gauge of whether or not your acting is going to last a career or just a small amount of time. Because if you're able to do this small thing, which is a lot of work, but then this small thing can be able to achieve the continuity. And it's not like, okay, so here comes another thing, because the only thing that really matters in the continuity is consistency, right? The emotional consistency, you could also call it. So there's an emotional consistency, which is the emotional continuity. And understanding these terms, because people use different terms. But when you're understanding this, now The only thing that consistency requires is constant change. The only thing. So understand this, burn this into your brain. Consistency requires constant change. Now, this is of vital importance because when you're dealing with consistency, the only way for you to achieve consistency on camera is to be able to go back and be able to make a plethora of changes to your work to be able to achieve that consistency. Initially listening, you might say, well, this is easy. It's a very simple approach, and it is. But if you're going to deal with anything that's consistent, it's going to have to involve change. Anything in life that's consistent involves a lot of changes in the background. So how would that look? Basically, you want to be able to, and we're just talking about 2 scenes, and you can do this with every single scene, and it's recommended. Now, don't burn yourself out emotionally when you're doing a large picture because that's a concern. You want to initially pick stuff that you can emotionally handle. And a lot of the directors don't, well, some do and some don't know how to handle that because emotional burnout for an actor can happen because they've used emotional preparation and they've used it too much. But don't worry about that for now. Understand that the changes that you have to make are to your own self and to your bubble of emotional preparation. So your independent emotional preparation activation time or your stimulation time, your emotional stimulation, it's when you're able to achieve all the different adjustments needed to be able to provide a consistency or an emotional consistency in your acting. So this means that, I don't know, maybe your mood changes from one take to the other, which is very common. Or maybe one of the emotional preparations just don't seem to be able to get yourself in the haste needed to be able to go on the outside of the restaurant to get in. Well, the director might stop it and say, listen, we see that you've got some emotion. We get that and we appreciate that. We know that the emotion's really good to have, but you're not hasty enough to be able to get into the restaurant. You're not quick enough to get in. So what you can do is you can do 2 things. You can take the director's opinion and you can ignore it, which is not advisable. Or you can fake it, which is not advisable, because you could always tell yourself, well, all I have to do is walk faster. No, you want to be able to make the adjustment within your emotional preparation. So what you would do then is you would go back and you would be able to feel the emotions that you were feeling, keep yourself consistent, and make all of these little changes that are then later going to lead to that consistency. And this is the work of an actor. This is what actors work for. This is the way that actors expand their humanity faster than other people because they're working with their emotions every single day. So if the directors turned around and said to you, we like what you're doing, but just add some hastiness to it, add some vivacious walking, do this and that. Now, he's not saying you shouldn't just go ahead and say, well, I'll just do vivacious walking. Try and find it emotionally first, not just getting the idea from the director. And then this is when you start to be able to craft acting with your own process. So your crafting process is, okay, where do I find haste? Where internally do I find haste? Okay, now, I know the importance of what it is that's the reason why the importance, but there's got to be another reason why I can add something in my emotional preparation to be able to activate that and feel that activation of wanting to get somewhere quickly. And so your emotional preparation at that point is keeping what you already have, which is going to require some adjustments because every single preparation is usually an ebb and flow. It's always going to be interchanging. It's going to be changing a little bit. And you want to feel the fact that you've got some overwhelming desire to have to get into the restaurant. And then you want to add, and you want to layer in your emotional preparation. You want to layer your work so that you've got haste. And you want to feel something where you feel a bit of an emergency. Now, then, as soon as you feel that, and everything is okay, and you got your cues with the directors of when you're going to go or when you're not, or you tell them that you're ready, or they tell you when they're ready, and hopefully you've been able to time it correctly. Then you start with that emotional preparation. You let go of that emotional preparation, and you start walking into the restaurant. You need to find out what's going on. There's this deep concern, and because you've added that other ingredient, because you've made an adjustment and a change to yourself, then you get into the restaurant, and there's this haste, and the directors turn around and go, "Wow, yeah, we saw the difference. The camera saw the difference. We saw the difference, so the camera must have saw the difference," and then you can go from there. Now here's the key. You know what you did to be able to get that initial emotional preparation correct. And you know what you did to be able to have that haste. Now, you're inside the restaurant. You can't just emotionally prepare without the haste, because the directors asked you to be hasty outside the restaurant and walk with a fast pace, so you don't worry about the scene direction so much, but you worry about it emotionally that you're going to do the action without even thinking. And you've walked in the restaurant with haste. Now, it's an hour and a half later, 2 hours later, they've set up the film crew inside the restaurant. And your job is to walk into the restaurant. First thing you do is you have to walk into the restaurant. You have to do all of those changes emotionally to be able to sit down and be able to have the meaning, and you want to have the feelings that are activating the emotions, and you want to have the ideas that are all interplaying, and the biggest thing that you want to have is what? The emotion. And you have the emotion of the reasons why you're there, and you have the meaning take you there, and that's what it is. And then on top of that, you've got to add haste. You've got to add the ingredient of haste to your acting, because this is exactly what it is. You've got to add. You've got to walk into the restaurant with that haste, the same little bit of panic, the same little urgency that you had outside the restaurant. Maybe even a little bit more, because you've progressed a little bit in the scene. It's even better if it's a little bit more, just a touch. And then you walk into the restaurant. You wait for the scene to start. You go back into your emotional preparation. And you work this out, and you've got this alive in you. And by the way, this work's emotionally exhausting. I don't suggest doing a lot of it, but at time you'd be able to do more and more over time. And without getting completely wrecked in terms of tired and exhaust. It's exhausting work, but this is life. This is what you want to do. You want to be able to live. You want to be able to live as full as you can. So you add the element of haste to your emotional preparation as an additional ingredient. And you've got the emotional ingredient, and you enter into the restaurant, and you've got this some kind of urge and this urgency and this haste about it. And the concern. And you bring that into the scene. And then you do the scene. And the scene comes back at you. And the partner says something back, and immediately you have some kind of response. You may not even know what your response is going to be. And then all of a sudden the line spurts out. "I can't believe you left the restaurant. Unlocked last night. Don't you know how important it is to lock up correctly? We could have been robbed." Now, that's a way to be able to achieve emotional preparation. And then the only thing, don't do anything other than go into the truthful moment of it. And see what they say back. And that is the difference between being able to work with talent and then be able to say, well, we're just there to say lines. We're not just there to say lines. We're actors. We're there to live lines. We're there to live life. We're there to feel life. We're there to be able to facilitate a real-time experience. And when somebody says back to us, oh, we have to go back and do that scene from the beginning of the take, and we have to be able to then match it with this and this and this. We should be able to do that because that's our jobs as actors. And the only tool, you could call it different things, but the reality is the only tool that can achieve that is emotional preparation. The only thing that can achieve that is the internal stimulation of emotion, of your own emotion. The only thing to be able to achieve that is proper emotional preparation technique. And that is how you achieve emotional continuity in your work as actors. You must be able to do this to be able to have full careers. And you must want to do it. You must want just so badly. This is great. There's an opportunity to act. Well, this is how you act. You don't go and fake it and say, well, I wish I could get another job and you're on this job. No, you're working actively with your emotions and your emotional preparations on every single set, and you have no idea if there's going to be more work or not, but you trust that if you work with techniques that there's going to be a plenty amount of work. Or you'll eventually start getting more open with it. And I'll tell you, when there's actors and directors out there that are not using techniques and all they're doing is tricks to say, oh, well, we found out that all you have to do is walk from this area to this area. And if we turn at the right spot, then it looks like we've tricked the camera. Well, okay, good luck. I'm glad people have done all kinds of creative stuff. It's kind of amusing, but it's not real acting work. Real acting work comes from the gut, it comes from emotion, it comes from essence, it comes from feeling, it comes from emotion. You can't depend on the feeling, you can depend on the emotion. And then you can use the meaning of that emotion, use the meaning to be able to carry over the threshold so that the consistency is there. And then you have to add the urgency, or you have to add whatever it is that the director is asking you. And then you try and add that, not by having some simple trick. You add that by making sure that you're able to bring in emotionally what it is that you're being asked to bring in. And every single person's going to appreciate it that sees that, because audiences aren't stupid. Audiences will look and go, why did that guy, or why did that girl, or woman, why did they walk into the restaurant that way? Wow, this is really interesting. And then they see why. They go, wow, they didn't expect. How could the employee be so irresponsible to leave the door unlocked that night? And the audiences then get invested in it because they see what? They see the actor invested in it. And they know that there's an importance, and they know that there's an emotion behind it. And that emotion they can experience in real time as they're watching it. And then we've done what we've always wanted to do in acting, which is we bridged the gap of time. And then we can get into this thing that we can do, and we can then start to realize that we're actually doing work that's timeless, which is the point of acting anyway, which is the importance of emotional continuity. So you have a choice to make as an actor, and make it, and to realize that there's absolutely no pressure. It's an exploration. These are just examples of how you can activate yourself, and you can use emotional preparation to achieve emotional continuity. You might have some very neat tricks and neat techniques, and they might be very interesting, but don't try and trick your emotion, because you need your emotion to be able to trust you, and you need to build up the trust with your emotion. And when you're able to achieve that, then you're able to achieve emotional continuity. And then you've answered the question, what is emotional continuity?